of what could likely happen to the bridge are going to be things that we're going to end up out of pocket anyway. So it just comes down to, we're really looking, in my mind, at these big events. You know, if there's a big earthquake and the bridge collapses into the river, you know, where's your risk tolerance for that?
Well, I say kind of the same.
Yeah.
Maybe a little.
I mean,
bit
there's some
different.
other nuances. Metaphors are imperfect. I mean, yeah.
So if you look at this bridge
Mhm.
and we're obtaining funding and we're gonna have a cash flow issue on the
Yes.
new bridge, getting it in place by 2029.
Mhm.
This one stays open. Now, if we had a catastrophic failure and this dropped into the water and we were able to get the maximum award
Mhm.
and you put it to the new bridge to replace the old one, service for the community.
Mhm.
What that would do for the community is speed up the cash flow
Mhm.
for the new bridge, which would allow the new bridge to either maintain or perhaps accelerate the effort by a little bit. Is it gonna make other than that cash flow issue, I don't see it doing a whole lot for the money that you're paying for it. Now, the other piece of it, getting the old bridge out of the water would be a lot more expensive if it fell over and it's in the water than if it was standing and we're taking it down. So I could see catastrophic, we would use that money to help get that tangled mess out of the river,
Mhm.
which is gonna cost more. It still doesn't help the public, because they're gonna be without a bridge for several years, depending on when it happens.
Correct. This doesn't come down to, in my mind, like the axis of public service isn't really that relevant here. It's really comparing our being frugal versus tolerance for risk, and what exactly is our obligation, or do we think our obligation is with respect to limits of coverage?
Yeah, so if I look at this and I think about it, okay. You need money to get that mess out of the water. And you could use some money to ease the cash flow piece of it. Is it really worth $180 million at 422 million? The
Thousand.
likelihood of that bridge is really gonna fall in the water? I would say no. Myself. I think the chances of the bridge falling over in the next 5 or 6 years are pretty small. And the impact of that falling over in reality to the community is not that much, because there's not much you can do about it. Other than clean it up and put some money towards acceleration of cash flow. But could you do that at a $50 million?
You could.
Yes.
So,
So if we think that the bridge to take it down standing up is about 30. I wouldn't be surprised at all if it was a tangled mess, that 30 very quickly becomes 50. Just knowing the mess you're gonna have to try and lift out and cut up and whatnot, so. I think you've got a condition here where it's not 180. But at the same time, 50 may be a little bit light if you're trying to get the mess out of the water, at the same time you're trying to accelerate or, accelerate the schedule. Most of that 50 would go towards getting that stuff out of the river, which will be a priority. It won't let us just leave it sit in there.
Well, I think the other thing we need to look at is when you look at the difference in premium cost versus what we're getting out of it. You know, the 422 for the total 180. Or if we wanted to do the $50 million limit with a $1 million deductible, that's 323. You know, what are we really saving? And to your point, if it falls in the river and we need to get it out, is that 180 gonna be more helpful than a 50 with a $1 million deductible? When we're really only saving, I just had the math up,
$100,000 a year.
$100,000 a year. So that's, I think that's a bigger question. I mean, we can look at all the different scenarios of what the bridge is gonna look through, what the bridge could do. The main thing is what's the amount of premium versus what are we gonna get out of it? And what do we feel risk tolerant for?
Yeah, that's why I was kinda asking whoever's gonna evaluate this, look at the risk profile. With your help and is it a medium risk, is it a high risk, what's the likelihood or probability? I think it's probably low across the board, but
I think there is, I would agree with, I think it is of, and Torsby this point, which is. There's a short list of events that would really have large scale damage to the bridge. And so. With that in mind, I think that needs to be kind of in the calculus of this. The one thing that I did want to share, because I was in the process of doing this, I was trying to get a better understanding of. In the initial proposal, the 152,492,370. I went back to the underwriting department and I said, I'm trying to understand, I know how we've gotten to that number, which is over the years, it's gone up based on a variety of factors. But I said, where did the number start and how are we getting there? And that number is what they, in insurance terms, would refer to as the probable maximum loss. So in their calculation, it is not a replacement cost figure, but it is in their calculation, if something happened, what it would probably take to pay the port, what it was owed for the entirety of what went on. Now, there's a lot of speculation in creating that number too, in my opinion, because it depends largely on the type of loss. But nonetheless, that is where that number, or that is the terminology behind that number.
so another way to look at that, and thank you for that. If we had the 152 value. And the bridge is multiple costs of that. Knowing the kind of configuration of the bridge. What is the assumption to match the 152? Are we losing the lift span? Are we?
So yes, I think the lift span is heavily weighed into this calculation, and then in there would also be the understanding that if, depending where we are in the process of the new bridge, if something happened, it would be about the money would be made available potentially to help with the demolition of the old bridge. There's some moving parts in that conversation for sure, but yes, the lift span is a large driver to that probable maximum loss.
Yeah, so it either, I mean, what could happen there, more likely than not, it's gonna get stuck. Not in the down position, and we can't move it. And now we don't have a bridge. I think the probability of that versus losing a couple of spans falling over in the water. Is probably a lot less, unless we have an earthquake and the whole damn thing's falling in. So when I look at it, I'm thinking myself. More of the $100 to $75 million coverage range. For where we are on replacing the new bridge and the funding. What that would pay for, either one would pay to get the stuff out of the river. And help accelerate cash flow on the bridge. Which would potentially bring the bridge in earlier to help the community.
And you're thinking the $100 $100 million limit with the 500,000 deductible?
Yeah.
So the difference between the 100 and the 75 is only 21,000, and I know only is. It's not chump change, but.
Well. What could we use the 21,000
Right.
for?
For me, I have a high risk tolerance and I don't think it makes sense to insure the structure for a lot, so. I would actually argue for the 50 million, but I don't have a problem with 75 million. you know, maybe
At
we
the higher
can.
deductible?
One
No, it's
quick
lower
note,
than-
Yeah.
and I think this is important, is
Mhm.
when you get into those options as we come down,
Yeah,
and if we were to go with the $50 million option, 26 million of that is specifically set in the toll replacement, so you really are, if the total maximum is 50, and we've already sort of identified the toll piece.
I see what you're saying. I see what you're
Okay, so
saying.
that makes a big
For
difference.
me,
Yeah, it
then
does.
that makes the 75 million the attractive one for me,
Okay,
not the 50.
So
So
if there's 75, you take the first 25 off for toll,
for toll, then you got 50 million.
50 million, and 50 million would probably pay. If you're taking the whole bridge out, would take the whole bridge. If you could build a case that you take the section that's in the water out, leave the rest of it alone until the new bridge is open. And then,
But again, you're weighing
although they're
this,
probably gonna, once you start, they're gonna want you to
Mhm.
continue.
get it out of it.
you're weighing this against the probabilities. So it's a probability game.
I personally think the probability of getting the lift span stuck.
Well, if that's a mechanical issue, it's not gonna be covered by this policy at all. So,
That's not necessarily true.
well, you're right, there's some,
There's mechanical breakdown. There's mechanical breakdown coverage in the all perils portion of it. I think what you're probably thinking is with deferred maintenance and some other things, potentially. The insurance company would push back and say.
Yeah.
Hey,
mhm,
to this point. The underwriting department at Chubb has been reviewing, they know exactly where. The condition of the bridge is, and they are extending that coverage with the understanding. That it's. Where it is, and so I think that. I think that a real breakdown of the lift span. Would be largely covered in that. So,
post deductible.
yeah, posted, yeah.
So the rest of your thoughts?
Well, and we haven't had a catastrophic event that has conjured more than a couple million. In how many years? Ever?
Is that the elision?
Yeah, so the elision certainly had it proven to be what they initially
Uh-huh.
thought it was going to be.
A big,
The initial estimates were $15 or $16 million.
okay. When? 75.
That's a recommendation, I'm fine with it.
I guess one other thing that I would share, and I think this process has been helpful. Hopefully for you folks, but it's also been helpful for the carrier, because they are now very interested in engaging. With a path towards a sunset of the bridge, and what does that look like, and I hope that that's something that we can kind of all come together. And as the new bridge gets closer and closer, and we can basically, to your point,
Transfer.
Right,
take this thing.
exactly. I mean,
Yes.
if we're 2 years from opening the new bridge, we don't need 3 years of revenue coverage, right? Stuff like that. Yeah, making sure that it's scaled down sensibly. Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't know if I'd take it all the way to 75 today. But I would feel pretty comfortable going 100 today, 125. Our big funding's supposed to hit late 25 into 26. If that funding in fact hits and we in fact can get access to it, then the issue for us as far as getting a little bit more money for cash flow becomes a lot less important. The benefit of the cash flow will be now and the next 2 years, then it starts to degrade. So I would think we would look at maybe something like 100 for each of the next couple of years. Drop it down for 2 years to 75, and then the final year or two, drop it to 50.
Well, today we just need to decide this for this policy.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I, to your statement, what I would say is I think if we can get engagement from the commission. With the underwriting group, they're ready to have meetings whenever, or communication whenever, to help plan that trajectory.
Perfect.
Just one clarifying question, and this is maybe for Debbie. Is this in the budget, the 400 top numbers that are in our budget?
Yeah, it
So
is in the budget.
if we decide to do something that's 40 grand less than that. Where's the money go? Do we say, put a placeholder on it? We want to talk about that in the future, or does it just get wherever?
Save it for deductible. Yeah, I mean, I'm always hesitant to go, it just gets wherever, because nothing gets just wherever.
Who decides? where it goes?
But yes, it will, in the next budget process, what it will do is show that you have more money available to budget next year.
Or use
Indeed,
this year on
or
something else. if you
whatever.
choose to.
Or it can be reappropriated this year.
I'm
for
just curious how that
something else.
process works.
Yeah, no.
So we, okay. Thank you.
So I was surprised that the premium for the top and the bottom were as close as they were. And I'm a lower risk person. I feel like we have to remember we're insuring a public asset. And it would make me nervous to go on the lower side.
So is 100 on the low side or?
No, I'm more comfortable at that level than
Okay.
the 75 or 50.
All right, how about that 100 million limit with the $1 million deductible? That frees us up, 65-ish thousand dollars from what we were gonna do. It's still a very, robust amount of coverage.
I agree, and we can find $1 million if we had. to.
Exactly, that's my thought. If we have to, fine, and then we get some of that reimbursement and then it backfills that $1 million. So. Does that sound good to everybody? For the next year? So,
That's the 100 million limit with the $1 million deductible.
yeah,
Do you need a motion on that, if that's what we're, direction we're going, Christie, or what? do you want?
Yes, I will need, so that's a difference of a savings of 65,627.
yeah. Yeah,
If it was your bridge, what would you do?
It's interesting. And I really hope that question wasn't gonna come up. because, It's the public's bridge, right? And that's what you guys are struggling with. And I think Forrest's point is perfect. If it was his bridge, make a decision and
Yeah.
then he lives and dies with it as his bridge. As the public's bridge and a board.
Yeah.
Man, it's just, those are the hardest decisions. I do, in my opinion, think that some reduction in that top line number was warranted. And I do feel that and I have this conversation with parents about their children's cars and their car insurance, which is, if you can afford the $1,000 deductible, if there's an accident with the car, it's probably better to have the higher deductible. And I think in this case, if the court, we're not talking about $1 million deductible, we're talking about the difference between $500,000 and $1 million. So it's a $500,000 question. And if the court can find that money or has that, probably warrants it.
Yeah, I look at it kind of the same, but a little bit different from the public's point of view. We're gonna get heck if the thing falls over, no matter what we've got.
Yeah.
And the question will be, why did you only put 100 million on it when you knew it was gonna be 500 million to replace it? And now we're arguing, well, it's not reasonable to try and put $500 million.
Back on that.
Well, and in fairness, that's where that maximum loss number was generated from. That's the most coverage that is actually being offered. That probable maximum loss, that's the highest that they would,
Give me a
Mhm.
that's the
Yeah.
highest that they would.
So to me,
Come on,
our rebuttal to the public would be.
we get
tried
what
to
you get.
balance it out. We're actually using some of that money to accelerate the new bridge. We're using some of that money to take it out of the river. And we're protecting our investment in not only the new bridge, but revenue for some of the continuation of the port. They're still gonna complain, but
Yeah.
I think there's a logic there.
I agree.
Okay, can I get a motion from someone?
Yeah, I move that we approve the 2024 Chubb Bridge Insurance Policy Renewal at a level of $100 million limit with a $1 million deductible.
Second,
Any discussion? No discussion, all in favor? Chair, aye.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your time, Scott.
oh, that's good.
Okay. Ooh, I did not want to do that. Where'd my stuff all go? Okay, so. Back to action item B, approved contract with Barry Elsner and Hammond, or did you want to move the?
No, let's take 2 seconds. That's just a
Okay.
recommendation from you two.
Yeah, so do you wanna take that, or do you want me to?
Go for it, yeah.
Kristen, our general counsel, had meetings with several firms that showed interest in becoming our general counsel. She and Kevin did a really good job in whittling it down to 2 agencies that both of them, I would say their qualifications were incredibly similar. They both take on public agencies. They both have municipalities that they oversee. They're both kind of small group between 9 and 12 attorneys.
Yep.
Each with a kind of a focus on something having to do with a public agency. So the hope would be that in the future, we wouldn't have to go out to special counsels as much. We would be able to utilize some in-house stuff. And after Heather and I and Kevin all both met with the final 2 firms, the recommendation is to go with Barry Elsner and Hammond for Port General Counsel. So we just need a,
Well, I got one question for you.
Yeah.
Why did you, between the 2, what was the thing that really pushed you into the one that you selected?
I can answer my opinion was they were equally qualified. And so it came down to, sort of personality and how we thought they fit in with, the port.
yeah. I would have No, I would agree with that too. If you look at their statistics and their business models and their business outputs, it was apples to apples for sure. The one thing that I would say, kind of along with Heather, is just a little bit of personality. And one of the things that I know has been very important to this commission is to have a general counsel that when you say, this is where we want to go, they kind of look for that path instead of saying, can we do this? And I would say that Barry, they were very eager to say, we'll take all of the information and we'll guide you along the path that you guys were wanting to
I
go.
understand where you want to go. We'll help you.
We'll help you get there.
Legally.
Correct.
We also thought the other, group appeared to be more hands-off. And Barry was more hands-on, really more personal.
Was the interface on both of them roughly about the same age of experience?
No,
Not for our primary contact, but overall,
Okay, so
Legal.
the one you selected was younger or less experienced?
the one that we selected, the point of contact person has less clinical, not clinical, but professional, sorry, less professional expertise, but is also hungry in I want to take where you guys want to go and get you there. But she also has the backup of partners and whatnot that do have that
I've read
additional
that.
experience.
Of the evaluation that I saw. I didn't see anything on the second one,
Mhm.
but my real question kind of now leads to. She's easy to work with, you like the chemistry, she's hungry, she wants to make a name, build her career, and that's all really, really good. Can you judge whether she knows or recognizes what she doesn't know? So she knows when to go get help if she needs help, and she's not trying to, and this is not the right term, but fluff her way
Mhm.
through the process. She learns through the process by reaching back into organization and pulling expertise in.
My feeling on the conversation is she had an immense amount of support from her, from the lead, I guess you would call Chad, it was her
He's one of the principals.
mentor, one of the principals.
Okay,
Um,
and you feel that she's, and it's not the right word, but mature enough to realize when she doesn't know, she will reach back.
I believe so, yes.
Okay. That was my major concern when I saw her.
Mhm.
Yeah, we talked about that, about her years of service
Mhm.
and did feel like that they had a really great team that worked together really well.
The team seemed fine. I would have begged to ask a question. How many litigations did she really go in front of the judge?
Well, I would, if I could,
Yeah,
typically those lead positions aren't the litigators. They usually bring that litigator
Mhm.
in for what it's worth.
Yeah.
They do have a litigator on staff.
Yeah.
That's part of their team. So if something did have to go to court, they'd bring that person in.
And as long as you think she knows what she doesn't know and she'll take the right action.
you gotta know when to hold them and.
I like their attitude, if you ask them a question. And this, when I asked Christie, what is she like? It's not just no, it
Mhm.
was, let us see what's possible,
Mhm.
within the, confines of the law, we'll get back to you. Not, you can't
What we
do that,
want.
which is what we want. And
Exactly.
also, quite honestly, I'm not gonna have any legal authority to contact this person unless I go through Christie and then Heather. I can't do it, so it needs to be somebody that they're comfortable working with on a daily basis. Is outside of them and Kevin, nobody's directly communicating with these attorneys outside of a meeting here, so I think that's really important.
The other
Their
thing that
selection is supported.
isn't a huge deal, but it was brought up that I did like is that if there was a situation where there was a fire and we needed someone here, you know, this firm is out of Portland versus Eugene. It's not a huge deal breaker, but it is a weensy bit closer as far as when we need in person. But I do think that 95% of what they can do is via Zoom. So,
Well, I like the idea that they're in other municipalities as
Mhm.
well, so you get some cross-training, cross-breeding going on, and we're not just stuck in, this is what we've done in Hood River for the last 100 years.
and they do work with the county, so they do understand kind of what's happening politically here in the gorge. So
One request, get them to a meeting, I don't care if they need to be here or not, get them to a meeting.
They'll be at the
relatively
next meeting.
soon, just so we can,
meet them.
If she's planning on being here at the
That's the
meeting of the
next
20th.
Mhm. Okay.
I'm good.
So if I could get, do I need to do an action item,
Yes,
a motion?
There is a motion in the staff memo.
If I could get a motion. For legal counsel. Approved contract with Barry Elsner and Hammond for Port General Counsel Services.
I so move.
second.
All in favor?
I,
Okay.
Great, thank you.
All right, and then last action item is to approve contract with WSP USA to complete Connect Oregon grant application for lot 1 transportation improvement, or is,
Can I recommend that we'll go to the discussion item with Scott, and then if there needs to be some slight modification to that contract, it can be done.
okay, yeah, that's fine. You wanna take that one?
Kevin can introduce them, then
Okay.
I'll jump in.
Yes, so we did a full procurement for this owner's rep contract, which primarily is focused on writing grants, producing the financing for the roundabout project and the First Street realignment. Also to work with KPFF, ensure that KPFF is meeting their scheduled targets. Work with EDA to amend that grant agreement to allow for the roundabout. Produce any kind of communications or handouts or PowerPoints that are needed to communicate the project. We did end up receiving 3 proposals. And so we scored those. And WSP was the leading scorer. And so at that last meeting in January, staff was directed to begin the negotiations. And so Ben, myself, and Scott met and felt that it was perhaps the best next step would be for Scott to attend this meeting and there be a direct communication from the commission to the consultant about the mission and the vision of your vision for the project and how Scott can really help the commission get this project done. So after the discussion with Scott tonight, he will go update the scope of work, apply the rates and so forth, and then that'll be shared with Ben and I. And assuming there isn't any other big changes from that, our hope is to bring a contract back to you at the meeting on February 20th. The reason for the subsequent action item is there's some deadlines that are coming up on grants. So WSP is already, just as a preview to that action item, they're already under contract to start preparing those documents. If for some reason this negotiation were not to materialize, WSP would, take that work that they've done and hand it off to the subsequent proposer. But that's kind of where we're at and kind of how we are looking to get this thing completed. But I think Ben's been very involved in this process the whole way. So with that, I'll introduce Scott Kyler, who lives here in Hood River. I've worked with Scott off and on for 25 years. So
Pleasure.
yep.
Great to be here.
Scott, I don't know if maybe you want to just kind of give a brief background before diving into the
Yeah, no,
project.
thank you very much. It's an honor to be here, commissioners. Thank you for the opportunity to again work with the port. I've worked over the years with Kevin. 35, 40 years here in the Gorge, a little more gray hair than that, working on project management. And over the last dozen years for WSP. And I think, the significance of being an owner's rep for Lot 1, for this vision you have for bringing the transportation improvements forward, is a super exciting one for me. Because I can be here, work with you. That's why I wanted to sit down, make sure we're understanding each other. I have a bit of a high level schedule, which I'll pass out in a moment. But this is really about, again, that public service charge, getting the right infrastructure in place, solving it for a beautiful waterfront, for the many uses, the employment, the recreation. But the beauty of this project is with this roundabout solution solving also for ODOT and that statewide mobility standard that they seek through the IAMP. And I've been involved over the years with this, down to some of the zoning and concepts down there. But the idea of bringing the construction of the transportation improvements forth to unlock that potential, but solve the super regional problem, I think is a great story. And that's why maybe it'd be just easiest to pass these along. Would you mind? That's why when I was invited to give you a high level discussion and tune up the first, you see the Lot 1 owner's rep is 3 years plus if you choose to extend it to really go in a work order fashion. So this really kind of defines, we've talked about work orders by year, but essentially I put this into 2 phases and you'll see more detail on the front phase for the first 2 years. And we're thinking, the main thing here are plans and construction for those transportation improvements. Key, and again, running on the same timeline, is the funding. You've got $2+ million, need $3+ million, and there are a number of places we can go. The first one showing up is Connect Oregon. You have several other current grants, so there's grant writing and coordination as well as grant management. And then, of course, the agency meetings to make sure we're tightly aligned, not just with KPFF on the schedule up above, but the port, regular briefings with you, ODOT and the city will be key players as well. And communications out. And whatever you'd like to do in terms of two-way communications in this first phase. With the community, these are sort of envisioned as fact sheet web updates so that folks know what's going on. I will go into more detail on those, but just point out on the back. This is the look ahead, and that's why it's in grayscale. 26 through 28. So the final 3 years, you really could turn your sights towards unlocking that potential. You have success, drive the schedule, build those improvements, and you can get involved in concept planning for lot one. Relooking at what could be out there, reestablishing the vision, the land use, preferred designs, and then of course, permitting and groundbreaking. I think ultimately, there will be a lot of voices in that process, but it's one, we know the history of that. But there's a whole nother discussion. So staying with the first 2 years, we have specific deadlines. Kevin mentioned the Connect Oregon grant, that's coming due in February. So we're off and running. The legislative appropriations processes, a grant of sorts that's also due in February, and those can kind of double up. But there are other sorts of grants our grant lead and team take on all the time, from RAISE to infra to a number of state ODOT immediate opportunity type of grants. So
Can you sell the depth of your grant writing bench a little bit more? Tell us a little bit
Sure.
more about that.
Yes, we have, actually, I have a lot of grant writing expertise, and including, was it a $6.5 million wharf we built in Garibaldi at one point? But I mean, I'm backed by a really deep team in a lot of areas here. Our grant leads are national. We have, 450 similar grant successes, and really up into the billions in terms of similar grants. And I'd be very specific that, a good dozen plus have been in the Port Arena for a similar project. So we feel like the story that comes with what you're trying to do here, and to really solve more than what's required in terms of the transportation concurrency to develop lot one, but to really take care of I-84 so that we never have to deal with that ramp meter situation or backing onto the ramps. It makes this really attractive. And so our grant writers are working on it. They're super excited and familiar with the port.
Thank you.
As the owner's representative, and specifically lot one general area, what do you see your role really is
Right.
to the authority and to the board?
I think as owner's rep, my responsibility to you is to ensure the schedule, to make sure that you're getting the value out of the time you have across the team. And just listening to your last discussion, knowing when to grab the deep bench folks that can back me up, the heavy hitters on the grant writing, the folks that can look at and have design roundabouts and say, KPFF, this is a great submittal. I would change A, B, and C. Right. And we have a lot of expertise on the team locally with city and day in and day out on both sides, ODOT and WashDOT, on similar master service agreements, GECs or general engineering contracts.
So
And the like.
challenging a little bit, so we've got a contract to go get the roundabout designed. What do you see your role is as an owner's rep on that contract? And what will you do?
I think that's a great question. Owner's rep, my sense is we've got to own that schedule. We've got to drive that schedule. We've got to really meet regularly. And because it is a separate contract, I would work primarily as a staff extension to the port and really ensure that you're getting progress, that you're getting reviews, and that you're not, getting surprises. Whether those are environmental.
Just take a minute and explain how you would do that inside a design house.
Right. Well, first of all, we have to proof the materials that are coming through. And we're not here to be your engineer of record. KPFF does that, so we're not redoubling efforts. We need to make sure, though, that the submittals are sufficient and be able to extend the reach of your busy staff in checking those boxes. And thirdly, we really have to communicate closely with you in the key agencies. That really goes for the plan construction side as well as the grant writing side with the agencies, particularly ODOT on this one.
So on the roundabout, and let's say you're the owner's rep. To the authority here. What do you see your responsibility is to the success of that particular project?
Well, Commissioner Fox, it's delivery. On-time delivery. This is not a soft schedule. This is aggressive. 2 years goes fast, so we need to deliver this project.
Yeah, what I'm looking for is, I'm responsible. Now, of course, we are too. But I'm looking for somebody that's gonna put some skin in the game, and I'm putting my reputation on the line. And that's my roundabout. Yeah, you all get to use it, but I'm gonna make sure it's done.
I like the way you think. That's that's my town, the front door from the Columbia River from downtown. Nothing would really make me more proud than delivering that for you on time. It will be my responsibility.
Okay, so let me give you one other perspective. When I looked at your schedule. Okay. But I don't feel like you've taken it. So when you look at grants, you can't be looking a year ahead. Especially on lot one, that's going to be lots and lots of moving parts. You need to be thinking the next 3 years, 4 years, grant opportunity. Other ways we can put funding packages together to be able to make that thing happen. Do you see that's your role?
Definitely.
Okay.
What I think what I'm trying to impart is the urgency in the next 2 years, but the funding doesn't stop. And the funding extends into the infrastructure. So we want to leverage every bit of local to state and federal match that we can. So it's really a package and a continuum. There are many sort of tasks. I know we started looking at a scope and we saw 1, 2, 3, 4. It isn't a sequential, but an ongoing effort along these key fronts, such as funding and delivery of construction and eventually vertical build.
I think whoever we get. To really make lot one a success and that whole area a success. We gotta think a little bigger, a little broader, a little longer term. Because that longer term, you gotta be thinking out 3 or 4 years if you're looking for funding now. Because that funding's not gonna be there for tomorrow. That funding's gonna be there for 2 years from now. And we gotta have somebody that's geared up to think that way and be able to communicate that back to us. But then at the same time, you're riding shotgun over contractors that are here. And what I would be looking for you to do over the design contractor is when they say they're on schedule, we look over to you and say, or,
Gotcha.
and you know why and where. And then the discussion is, okay, how can we recover? Or even better, how can we go faster and bring the end date in? So that's what I would be looking for from a management contractor. And don't wait for us. You're pushing us. That's what I want. I want somebody that's, hey, Ben, we can go faster. Here's where it is. And if we did this and this and this and this, we can make this happen. And likewise with Kevin, of course.
Appreciate that perspective. I think we can do that. I've got some 12, 14 resumes behind me that include the PEs that do everything from structural to master service agreement, funding for projects, delivery on design. But I'm willing to own it, and I appreciate your perspective very much. And it's interesting, I didn't maybe touch on it if you had a chance to look at the proposals, but I do have a unique history on the project, having worked on the waterfront, worked on lot one, working with permitting agencies locally. Although you're taking a new direction, which is great, I really love it. I do hit the ground running in terms of knowing what's there, and will commit to you that level of service to ensure we're looking ahead, keeping the schedule.
Now, with all that said, remember, you gotta live within the budget. You know, so you gotta work with everybody to create a budget for this whole thing, and you're a piece of it, so you can't just go. Open checkbook, let's go, you gotta balance all of that as well. But I think there is an incredible opportunity on lot one. It's the last big thing that the port's got. And in my humble opinion, it's got the best chance of really making a difference for the community. And if we screw it up, shame on us.
I agree with you, and I think you also want a team and a leader that understand the next steps and understand that what we do now impacts how the streets go and how the utility go, what the sort of the fabric that adds to the community once as the backbone. We come from transportation into how does this lay out? What are we doing with the waterfront in terms of commercial, recreational, employment? I mean, it's super exciting, and I want to rest proud that we did that for you, Chris.
Any other questions?
I'll just say that we did meet, Scott and Kevin and I did a week or so ago and discuss kind of the higher level issues that we've discussed and what's important to us, time being of the essence for obvious reasons. What our dates actually are, not some long decade, 15-year process, but 2026 becomes an important year for us for obvious reasons. We'll be differentiating this from that at every possible moment, because we're gonna be looking for grants, we're gonna be looking for funding as well, so we're gonna be talking about livability, transportation, access, things like that, not about. But we have obvious financial reasons in 2 years. So when I look at this schedule, I can tell that Scott listened. And we didn't talk much about the lot one side, we'll still talk more about that, but on the roundabout side, when I see construction next year, okay, he heard. So I think they understand here that time is of the essence, so we'll talk more about that. Budget wise. Probably what we're gonna be looking at is front ending some of this to get more done in a shorter period of time and shortening the length of this for the same reason. So I would expect some of the numbers you see in there to change a little bit by the time you see a proposal. But
Yeah.
I can tell that they're hearing
Good.
the direction we're going.
Good. And I was just trying to make the point that there's all kinds of different philosophies of, owner's representative. Okay, the way I look at it may be different than others. You are part of the team and you have a very instrumental part of making all this thing happen. If you're gonna over exaggerate, if you're gonna wait for us to tell you what to do, this isn't gonna work.
And WSP was pretty proactive, and Scott was on this Connect Oregon grant, like, hey, that needs to get done on this day, it costs this much.
Good.
We need to get that done, now do it, and I just said, make it separate.
Mhm.
But very proactively, it costs this much, you have to get it done by that day, so you don't have time to fart around talking about a contract for another month. So you'll miss it, so that's why it's separate, so.
Well, and I think it's apropos as well. I mean, I just got a letter from the city about, is a business going to be impacted by the storm water? And so I'm sure, that's a whole nother layer of the puzzle that's gonna need to be, someone needs to be on top of that schedule and on top of what's happening with the city and what's happening with the stormwater, and how do we work into that to shave off our timelines and all of that, so.
But that would be your point.
Yeah.
For anything down in that area that we're trying to develop.
As it
Hope so.
relates to getting to the point where we can build something that's not infrastructure or transportation. And then past that, if we decide to do something different, but it's getting you buildable.
Yeah.
getting the roundabout done first, which we already told the architects to do, and then getting the rest done ASAP and getting you to buildable.
I would personally, and you and I talked about it, but I'd like to see. Kind of a plan, not just the roundabout, but schedule for the next. Get all the infrastructure ready to go down there where we can put. A stadium down there or a. Multi-use facility or whatever we end up putting down there,
And I
but
think the back of that page would be tightened up by the time you saw a proposal.
Yeah.
At least
I went to the.
Yeah,
probably on the more, and what I was impressing is. You might not get something done in a year, but that doesn't mean you don't push for it to be a
Right.
year and do everything possible. And hey, if something out of our control change, fine, but if it can be done in 2, it should never be on here at 3 years, you know, so.
Yeah, and I think we're saying exactly the same thing. We've got a focus here. But we gotta have somebody focusing out here as well to make sure it's ready to go when its time is right. And we get the funding in place and everything else, so it's a great big puzzle that we gotta keep playing.
That's why you'd much rather see 2 contracts take care of the entire thing, or 2 phases, not 6, because you should be overlapping plenty.
I hear you.
Yeah.
it's interesting to hear you discuss it because we've been very involved in, apologies if you saw any of the cones on I-84 or the old highway, but we've been helping out deliver on this sort of bundled theme, 14 projects over 5 years. So we understand those shifting priorities and hitting those deadlines and communicating with folks what's going on so that they can, partake and follow and understand the project. So Ben's leadership, Kevin, it's been great. I'm really glad to hear from you and understand your perspectives as well. We're excited to get started if you give us the opportunity.
Christie, can I just make a
Yeah.
quick comment? I just wanted to bring the attachment B that was in your packet, and this was the draft work order number 1. So and Ben and I talked about this, but tradition, like with HNTB's owner's rep contract, it's driven by work orders and so I just want to make sure that as you review these tasks on that attachment B, that you're fine with that, or if there's something else that you'd like to include or something that you'd want to take out, because that's really the driving document as Scott develops his feet. So if there's any input, that'd be really valuable.
And you can email that to me as well if you want to,
Mhm.
Kevin, and any thoughts, any priorities you don't think are addressed.
Because I'm hoping that after this round, Scott will go back to his office and start, adding some numbers, clarifying some of the subtasks and really putting together the matrix.
I would suggest, Scott. Consider everything that we said tonight. You look at the tasks. And knowing kind of the expectations. Where do you see that we would need to add something to your task list to make sure you're covered?
I think it's a great suggestion. I do think, we're talking about compression, time is money and getting this done so we can front load some things. But there may be some additional tasks that make some sense as we move in here that have to do with, permitting strategies and understanding infrastructure that goes in with transportation improvements. Just making sure that we're looking at this holistically.
Yeah, see, I would be looking at you, and I'm sure Ben saying the same thing, is that you're gonna be watching out for the permit timeline. That you're thinking lead times, where we gotta start this permit here, if we're gonna need it here to be able to construct here. So we're not gonna keep track of all that stuff. We would expect you to keep track of that and say, okay, it's time. And we're talking about here, not out here.
Yeah, there's a master schedule, but within that we often do those permit matrices and permit strategies, funding strategies. Even though some of those things aren't known, we do know sort of timelines. front
Yeah,
and
but
end.
you certainly know the lead time that you gotta be thinking about it now. If you're gonna have it ready to go by here.
Yeah.
If you wait to think about it to here, you're gonna go out there.
Totally agree.
Or-
We'll include it.
do something really weird to try and bring it back.
And within, the budget limitations, we need to be efficient, and optimize what tasks we're doing so that we're not redoubling, but we're getting the important milestones on the table in that.
I'll give you the example. I expect you to play basketball by bouncing the ball in front of you. So you're managing the ball, you're not chasing the ball. And you'll be a success if you're managing the ball.
Very good.
And we want you to succeed.
Nothing around the back, between the legs, just
Just
straight up the
bouncing.
middle. I love it. That's great. It's great input.
Well, it sounds to me if what I'm hearing correctly is that the commission is happy with continuing to move forward with WSP, get additional information,
Yes.
and then, but we do have an action item. Because we do have some deadlines for the Connect
Yeah, I'd recommend you guys pass that Connect Oregon small
Oregon.
grant contract, even if a contract with WSP is not something we can agree on. Getting this
Piece.
piece done should be, and it is very time critical.
Yeah, and if you wanted to do this first piece now, I'm fine with it. You can always do an addendum to it, but yeah.
The first contract's not ready yet. It'll be on or the actual
Next week.
it'll be on your agenda, hopefully by the next meeting.
Yeah.
It would be the goal.
But
But
I'm
this,
just saying
this,
that
this
if
piece
you
needs to
wanna
be done.
modify that list, you can modify it 2 months from now. I don't care about that, as long as we're thinking through it.
Does that give good direction?
Just, yeah, it is. One thing I would like to bring up, it's something I've talked to Scott about. So the federal congressionally directed spending, we did learn that date is February 23rd.
Mhm.
And so,
Was it part of that discussion we had with the senator's staff?
yes, so that.
Okay, you need to do that.
So what we really, just to talk with Scott, make sure that, because we wanted to explicitly state Connect Oregon,
Mhm.
but there's another grant, and so, just making sure that that CDS is taken care of, and hopefully we can mirror a lot of the same work.
Talk to my grant lead. It's technically the 25th if you include the weekend, but I like the 23rd better.
Couple days.
But yeah, we're trying to already redouble what we're spending to make that Connect Oregon twice as valuable.
So we need 2 motions then?
I
Or
think
just
just
one
one with an amendment
with an amendment.
to add the CDS.
Okay,
Does that, do you think, will that,
I think that the CDS will cause a little more effort.
Mhm.
But I certainly expect that that will be the goal of ours. You're trying to put the CDS under the current contract.
yes, because we're gonna, because the actual contract won't be approved until the 20th,
Oh, I see.
so.
Yes, because there'll only be 3 days left.
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, it's basically the same materials. We just have to work on that tip question that I asked of you.
Yeah.
We've been working on this, but throw it in there.
okay.
So I guess on that item would be the contract that was in your packet amended to include the CDS, the congressionally directed spending application.
So can I get a motion to approve that?
I can make a motion to approve contract with WSP for producing the Connect Oregon grant application for Lot 1 roundabout funding
And
and adding the CDS application.
I get a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? If not, all in favor?
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Thank you very much. Is that it?
That's it. That's all we have.
And we're adjourned. Thanks, everyone.
All right, Scott.
Here we go.
Yeah.
Scott, thank you.
Scott, would you
All right,
expect to hear from you again?
You got 2 Scots.
Only Scots can come to the meetings.
Your guy, if you need around the bell.